Hey everyone, welcome to Gene Apologetics. As of course your host Gene. Today will be a casual cappy video where we're going to get sketty and talk about a couple of different topics. I want to have some more content on my channel. Channel's kind of dying. It's dying. It's over. It died. A lot of my videos get decent views and some of them don't. And that's sus. And also, other than all the modern lingo I'm using, I just want to say that in all seriousness, I do want to produce better and faster content on here. And this is theology scene. And, YouTube seems to be changing. I think people are tired of the overly edited TV quality videos in the first place. So I'll do some like that, but it's just not worth my time to make every video that good. So today we're going to be talking about some things that will be happening in my book, topics I'm covering. We'll be covering, obviously, Platonism, Neoplatonism, Pythagorean metaphysics, the impact it has on the Western psyche and how that's a departure from the biblical religion, what the true Bible teaches, and what the early church believed about that. So it's not just my own subjective looking at the Bible, but rather the church's opinion throughout the ages, and how the early church had opinions on the Bible that would be much more faithful to what the scripture says compared to how we have modernist language about it today. And so one of these that I would like to talk about today, also I deal with atheism, and prove archaeological findings in the Bible, such as the Noahic flood and the revelations of Mount Sinai, location for that, and such ideas. So one of the things I do, my cat's bisking on his cardboard, so alright, he's done. So one of the things to talk, I guess he's not done. One of the things to talk about would be Origenism. I see that Origen has become kind of a pseudo saint. He's essentially venerated by a lot of modern Orthodox, and that's really no surprise because the modernist Orthodox, including some of the trad right-wing Orthodox converts, are really guilty of Origenism and Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism really entered the church, or the confines of the church, via Plotinus' greatest apostle, Origen. It's not like Plotinus walked in and told everyone to believe what he was saying arbitrarily, because they wouldn't. It's Origen who brought that in. And so here's some things, if you think that you might be, or a friend of yours, someone you know or love may be guilty of Origenism, here's some signs to look out for. Origen was completely obsessed with Platonism. He taught that the Torah, the events of the Old Testament, were completely allegorical. It was all symbolism and none of it was literal. That's one thing. Based on that presupposition and his universalism that he inherited rather from Platonism than from the Bible, he also teaches, in lieu with it not being literal, that even the events such as going to heaven and hell would have a totally different meaning in Origenism as well. His free will teeters into full-blown Pelagianism, where his doctrines of free libertarian free will lead to the idea that in heaven you can even leave heaven, and so there's constantly people going down and up from heaven because they're doing their free will sinning in heaven, and then they're falling out of heaven. So his extreme free will, which went even beyond Pelagianism, arrived at the logical conclusion that you have so much free will you can even choose to sin in the presence of God. And so he did not believe in any kind of compulsion or influence of God on your salvation. Like I said, Torah was totally allegorical for him. A lot of the Bible was probably allegorical for him. And it's from these areas that we get the logical conclusions that a lot of modernist Orthodox have done, such as Jesus didn't physically go up to heaven. He entered into a different plane of existence. Heaven isn't physically above the earth. It's in a different plane of existence. That's all symbolic. When the God-inspired prophets and saints write Jesus ascended upward in that direction toward heaven, they were just lying. That was clearly symbolism. And so the modernist Orthodox veneration of Origen is really not a surprise whatsoever. Origen also condemned the idea of saying that God has any form, that he's so utterly transcendent that he's beyond the categories of being and cannot be contained in a form. And so Origen's thoughts of Neoplatonism would eventually impact the Catholic Church with their monadic view on the ineffably simple, utterly transcendent pure act, or actus purus, absolute divine simplicity version of God, compared to the essence-energy distinction and kind of the more realistic monarchia, which is definitely more loyal to the text of the New Testament. So Origenism essentially is, you don't believe in the Old Testament, people have so much free will they can sin in front of God, God is not really involved in anything, God is utterly transcendent, and so on and so forth. And so these ideas end up bleeding into the church via Origen, but you see a lot of people fight against it, such as Theophilus, whose council in the year 400 in Alexandria condemns Origen specifically for the fact that he believed that God never has any form. And so that would call into question so many different Bible passages where God does seem to have a form. In any event, Origenism is covered and dealt with in my book, as are topics such as evolution, metaphysics, biblical truth, morality, tribal morality, and such like that. So I hope you guys will be looking forward to that. I'm still working on the book, so probably another 100 pages to do. I may or may not include, relationship stuff, how the sexes view each other, and the role of the man per the Bible. I may do a chapter on that, and the role of women in the Bible as well. So, or ideally in a biblical society. So I will be doing stuff on that matter. But essentially, those will be kind of the main topics of the book. Like I said, trying to get a lot more content out there too. Oops. One more thing to keep in mind is that in addition to dealing with Origenism online, there are people that go above and beyond what Origen ever could have fathomed. And I've dealt with Aristotle Papanikolaou on my channel before, where he says that Christ is not male when he goes to heaven, which is total nonsense because the book of Acts says that in his man form he goes into heaven. Additionally, how can Christ not be male? Even if he never incarnated, the Son would still be male, because God is male. Okay, the Father is male. He's not this genderless spirit. The Father is male. That's why in 1 Corinthians, St. Paul says that man is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man. So woman is not the image and glory of God, or else he wouldn't have written that. The prophets don't lie. The saints don't lie in their God-inspired scripture. So man represents God in a way different than women, because the image of God is not some vague, disembodied soul. The image of God is the man. And that's not something to be arrogantly proud of. Okay, I'm definitely against all kinds of modern reactionary ideologies. Just because I say I don't like modernist liberals doesn't mean I like modernist conservatives either. They're two sides of the same coin. Neither are traditional. In any event, the image of God is not a soul. The image of God is man. And so woman is the glory of man, just like man is the glory of God. And so man, yes, man would be incomplete without woman here. God says it's not good for man to be alone. That's why there are women on this earth. Women are necessary, but they're not the image of God. And so to say everyone's the image of God is the start of a whole slew of heresies. And that's where this, taken to an even more logical extreme conclusion, would be this idea that you're not allowed to punish anyone because everyone's always the image of God. But you're taking the morality of the New Testament out of context there. I deal with this in my book as well. The New Testament teaches a form of almost tribal morality, where the fellow believer is supposed to be held in a much higher standard and a much higher benefit and privilege than the non-believer. Christ says someone who doesn't want to listen and is corrected twice is now a heathen. They're a publican. They're a kafir. They're outside. All right? That's it. They're not part of the fold anymore. They're not to be regarded as part of the fold. And so you can very easily become part of the covenant. But to say that we have to treat our civilizational enemies who want to eradicate, behead, or burn our places of worship, that's not in the New Testament. You're not supposed to love people that want to annihilate you. An enemy of God is not your friend. You're supposed to love your personal enemies. And there's many Orthodox saints which teach this. Love the enemies that are in your life. Do not love enemies like, your own neighbor. Do not love enemies who want to slaughter everybody in your house, burn down your entire country, and blaspheme God. That's not your personal enemy. That's not who you're supposed to love. It's not who you're supposed to tolerate. You're not supposed to tolerate an enemy of God.